I think one of the problems with us is that we have an idea of high culture and low culture that maybe speaks to something rather Victorian, where there were things you looked up to and things you looked down on. And I don't think in the early modern period, those distinctions were the same.
Well, it's a standing joke with my students. I'll say, listen, when you talk to next time you talk to your mother or father, tell them that you studied Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, and that you didn't learn about what Romeo without his roe, and the reference to fish and the reference to sperm, that I have to, because they are thirsty for this. They love this. And then the meow and the cat and being effeminate.
Yes.
And the sexism that's just intrinsic with
Yes.
this locker room conversation.
Yes.
I have to
Yes.
define that and explain that. And in one section of your book, it's about insult. And I'm very interested right now. So this is selfish. I'm very interested in insult, and also the fellowship of insult, in a case like famously with Hamlet, where he looks at the groundlings and calls them a bunch of idiots who wouldn't understand anything more than a dumb show, right? And I'm thinking they loved it.
Yes.
Now, I grew up in the American South in this male culture, and you have the older guy at school who's the tough guy, and everybody's scared of him, and everybody respects him, and you try not to make eye contact. And one day he looks at you and he insults you and walks by, and you go, "I'm in. I'm in." He took time to insult me. And it's a little bit of breaking that, I guess, fourth wall a bit, where the actor playing Hamlet, of course, isn't a prince, right? And there's a sort of inside joke there where he's, I can't think of a polite taking the piss out of, but that is a kind of repartee among these. It's sort of a male young man thing, and you have to be very careful, right? So if a comedian comes to South Carolina and does a show, he can go out there and say, "Well, I hear that all of you guys are a bunch of dumb, ignorant racists and so forth." All right, he might be able to get away with it, but the delivery, it's got to be expert. It's an all or none. Either you gather in everyone or you are run out of the town. So I saw that you were talking about that in insult, and that vulgar speech is so present in Shakespeare, and it's so interesting, and it's so ignored.
Yes, and you are right that one of the things about insult, correctly delivered, is that it unites people.
There's a unifying force in there.
Yes, it unites people, and it gives them the opportunity to shout back at the stage or even throw things.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly interesting that Hamlet, he does so many clown things. He tells clownish jokes. He insults the audience in that way. He ends up digging up the skull of a dead clown, and there's a lot of there's a lot of tragic clown about Hamlet going on, and I think and I think that's one such example. But yes, one way you excite an audience is to notice them and to see them. And these days in English we talk about breaking the fourth wall. The idea being that there's a proscenium stage with 3 walls, and you break through the other one. But of course, when you had a stage that was thrust into the middle of an audience, there wasn't exactly a fourth wall. But it's very interesting, the characters who see the audience, and the characters who within the fiction do not see the audience. And usually the clown sees the audience, and the prologue sees the audience, and the epilogue sees the audience and addresses the audience. And so you get a framework that takes you from reality into the fiction. And then there's usually, as I say, it's usually clown characters who continue to see the audience and know that they're not inside a fictional world. Yeah. It's really intriguing that Hamlet is one of those.
Yeah, that is something. I've never thought of that. And you make the point, I think it's about Henry V, where the audience has to be sort of the army. They have to be the multitudes. Yeah.
Yes. And you have to rally them. You don't want the audience to be having the same unified experience, the one that we have now, where we sit in the dark. You want sometimes to be insulted, sometimes to be roused, sometimes to be in the fictional world, sometimes to be consciously in the theatre, sometimes to be making eye contact with the actors, and sometimes to be being erotically charged, and you want to have a range of extraordinary experiences, so that going to the theatre is like going on holiday, or you've been to another land. You've had so many events, you felt so emotional, you're kind of drained afterwards. And this, we still sometimes get, I say we, I don't, but we still sometimes get with sporting events, but not with theatrical events, because we tend to be so formal about them.